Hi, this is the reading comprehension test. Just a quick 10-minute walkthrough about how I got each answer. I'm not going to read the paragraphs, but I'm going to just show it just in case. So, this is the first paragraph. You can pause it if you want, but first paragraph, first off, the question is going to ask, which is the main idea? Now, first off, I'm so sorry that probably there's a lot of typos in here. I tried my best not to. Um, so first off, what we can understand is that out of all this, Octavius Jante is something that's very important to know. Clearly he means something, but if we wanted to make sure, we can understand, okay, now they're talking about a thorough scientist. He built gliders. He took a scientist approach. Not once does it really want to talk about the first portion, which is this first line, which is usually where the main idea is. Like I said, main ideas can show up anywhere, but you could have taken a quick look and just realized that, okay, this paragraph is only talking about this man right here. So clearly he has to be very important. The next one asks about the meaning of the term fuselage or fuselage. So I'll let you pause it. And yeah, so basically, we're trying to understand what fuselage is. The first step literally says with the development of a body or fuselage. So first off, the answer is already C, the body of a plane, because that's literally what we were given. If you wanted to be sure, you can understand, okay, well, it's built on spruce frames covered with fabric. They are mounted between wings, and we know that the body is mounted between wings. We know that the body has the engine and propeller in an old, old plane. So one of those like propeller planes that go like this, and this is the wing, and this is like the fuselage right here. And so pretty much you just have to kind of pay attention to that. It did pretty much tell you immediately. So the next one is talking about what can be inferred. So when we read this, we see first off the word aviation consists of 54 planes, 38 pilots, and 163 enlisted men. Now they're talking about, oh, well, it's 50,000 men, 2,000 planes by the end of the war. And then it continues to talk about the insane rapid growth which was sent abroad during the conflict or the war, how they had successful anti-submarine and patrol operations carried out okay, don't worry about this, but it's carried throughout the war, and their Navy aviators. So first off, it has to do something with planes and Navy aviation. Doesn't talk anything about casualties, submarines, boats, war. It only talks about aviation, which also shows the 56 airplanes or the 38 pilots plus 160 enlisted men to the 50,000 now. Okay, this one asks about what is the most obvious conclusion or the most accurate conclusion. So first off, we understand, okay, they're talking about something with America, and this is the Air Force, so they're talking about aviation. Pretty much everything talks about planes here. So we're gonna talk about how they talk about how America picked up speed and finished with a credible record. They discarded its swaddling clothes, so it became a quote unquote adult because it lost its baby clothes. They had flown more than 3,500,000 or 3,500,000 miles, dropped a whole ton of bombs on Germany, and how in plane to plane they showed the most courage and initiative. Taken from this, first off, aviation, if we were to go from top to bottom, it didn't say they were lagging. It didn't say that their aeronautics was in the infancy stage because it just talked about how it was discarding its swaddling clothes. It did talk about how it matured greatly, once again from this swaddling clothes. It did not say anything about America learning how to fly a plane better than Germany, and it did not say aviation was a key factor to learning World War One. So your only obvious answer is going to be C. Next one says to identify the main idea. Well, first off, we're going to understand they are talking about something like planes in World War One. They go into detail about the feet and their ceiling. They go into detail about their horsepowers and their speeds, their average weight. So all of this, oh my God, I have a lot of typos. I'm going to have to redo this, but it talks about their average weight and their gasoline and stuff like that. So boom, 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 boom. So this is just that background aviation, which could get you to the answer of D, or maybe B or C. But when you keep reading on, it tells you, okay, well, all these planes have a habit of shredding parts under stress of battle. More pilots were killed during war because of defective equipment, lack of parachutes, and inexperience rather than enemy action. The only main idea that I'm getting from this is okay, they had all this good stuff, but also let's not forget that they killed literally everyone. So they were really dangerous and imperfect. They were not the state of the art. Aeronautics was not a growing industry because they had made mass production of fighter planes. Aviation was on the frontier innovation. That's not enough information, and fighter planes weren't more effective because they killed your pilots. So, yeah. This next one talks about what is the purpose of the passage. It was not until the end of the world that Navy men, I'm going to go back to yellow, that Navy men began to consider the idea of building a surface vessel capable of carrying airplanes at the sea. It continues on to say it must be devoted to carrying and hailing airplanes, aka an aircraft carrier. So the purpose is not, it didn't explain how ships were better than planes, it didn't explain how they must work together, which I could see your answer on that, but it does not do that. It does not describe the evolution because it didn't give enough information to describe the evolution, but it did explain how people thought, okay, let's put a plane on an airplane or a plane on a ship and call it an aircraft carrier. But it did not describe how they were designed. So just pay attention to that. If it didn't say it in the passage, don't worry about it. Okay, the next one talks about um, so next one wants to do what is something that the author would agree with. So basically this paragraph talks about the first sea flights around the world. It talks about how they have 4 aircraft carriers and they went from Seattle, Washington, blah blah blah. And 2 planes complete the trip, while the other 2 planes, one was destroyed in a crash and one sank after a crash in Atlantic. At the very end it says this world round was truly a daring operation. Not once do you get that it was exciting or expensive. Not once did he ever really say anything about it was rare for people to fly, because clearly 8 people just did. And it did talk about how it was dangerous under the guideline of it was a daring operation, which means it wasn't innovative because they were still learning how to fly. And if it was innovative, the planes wouldn't have already existed. So therefore your answer is D. The first flight around the world was dangerous. The next one wants us to figure out why the government was about to abandon airmail. Well, the first line talks about it, and immediately they say, okay, well, the government does not view it as valuable to the government unless it is flown by night as well as day. You continue reading it, and it just talks about how they can only be flying during the daytime because trains carry it at night, and then pilots, blah blah blah. So the first 2 sentences give you enough information to answer why they wanted to abandon it, and the reason is because it wasn't being able to flow during the daytime because there is no way for planes to land at night. Looking at the answers below, the only answer that makes sense is D. The mail needed to be delivered at night via, aircraft. They weren't dependent on weather because they were dependent on the sun. They wouldn't lose mail because it's an airplane. Mail was unpredictable from planes. Gotta fix that. And the answer is no. That's not enough information. And the last one, mail's not needed every day. Mail's needed pretty every day. So usually you can just find the answers in the passage pretty quickly. This next one talks about Which claim about aviation would the author likely agree with? Well, so here we know that they talked about the Kelly Air Commerce Act, and they say something about private firms flying air routes. It encourages private capital to enter the aviation field to carry mail and passengers. And then it talks about people, you know, being happy. So first off, private capital was not discouraged because of the whole act. Private capital was used to advance aviation for mail and passengers. That can be a way. The Kelly Commerce Act was important for the environment. Planes are not very important for the environment. Um, Ford was a global leader in aeronautics. First off, Ford wasn't really didn't really say anything about Ford other than the very top, and then they used it at the bottom to build the plane. The the post office department lost business to private firms. Once again, didn't say that at all. So in fact, the post office was contracting with private firms. So the only answer we could get a decent amount of information about was B, because they were able to also encourage to fly with passengers and mail. And the last one, which is what can be concluded from the following passage, the Wright brothers' first airplane. So it talks about the first Wright's first airplane was all this and used 25% of its energy to propel itself. They now created a air-cooled radial engine later that was a pound and a half of the engine, which is made to produce 1 horsepower, so very much a difference. A pound and a half of the engine to produce 1 horsepower is immensely better than 175 for just 12. Then I talk about their radial engine of horsepowers and fraction of weight. So you want to see, okay, so Wright brothers made superior planes against who? Doesn't have enough information because it's only talking about just their planes. Heavier engines were advantageous? Clearly not, because 170 for 12, 350 for 200. That just wouldn't make sense because a pound and a half engine just to produce 1 horsepower is pretty much equivalent to like I don't know, like 10 pounds for just 1 horsepower. So heavier planes were not advantageous. Most recent aircraft were more efficient. That's a very much possibility because as they developed, the possibility of being better got more and more efficient. Let's see the last one. Newer planes weighed less. No, no, because the engine is still 350 rather than the 170. They just produce different horsepowers. So it's just something to pay attention to right there. Fuel efficiency was a primary concern for early aircraft. Not once did it ever talk about fuel efficiency other than no. I mean, the only time I could see it talking about its fuel efficiency is when it says 25% of its energy propellant itself. But other than that, it didn't say anything like that. Therefore, the only answer that can even be backed up is recent aircrafts were more efficient. So that's it. It's pretty simple. Just read it. If it's explicitly stated, it is pretty much the correct answer. So just keep practicing. Don't overthink it, and it should be easy.